Hey everyone, thank you for joining us. I'm very, very excited to have this conversation with Corey Munson from PC Matic. Corey, why don't you quickly introduce yourself and then we're going to get into the topic for the day.
Sure. I'm Corey Munson. I'm vice president at PC Matic. Wear a lot of different hats, but mainly my biggest hat is working with partners from our MSP and our reseller community, and proud to call myself a friend of Jennifer.
Yeah, I agree. It's so funny. Sometime we'll have to talk about our very first conversation. I still remember I was at the Alvic event, which sadly was the only time Alvic had ever had this event. And I remember spending a bit of time on the phone with you and learning a little bit about the PC Matic vision and how you have since then really taken the MSP market by storm. It's been really, really fun to watch your growth and the success that you guys have had. So it's fun to be a very small part of that.
Oh, thanks.
So I want to jump in, and this is kind of like story time with Corey. I want to talk about something that happened about 6 months ago that was kind of a peek behind the curtain that most people they're not aware of. They maybe didn't think through how it might have impacted the team. And this was the IT Nation, the November event where was it a hurricane?
It was a hurricane, yeah.
Oh, and it was intense. Like they stopped running buses and transportation, and you and Breach Secure Now, you had planned an event that evening. So walk us through what that event was going to be, and then I'd like to understand, like, what did the conversation sound like? What were the feelings that happened as the events transpired in the days leading up to that?
Sure. Well, the plan was there's a speakeasy in downtown Orlando that I've visited a couple of times on my own. We worked with our friend Art Gross and the team and thought, what a great opportunity for us together collectively to host a little social time outside of the normal IT Nation events, and had coordinated being able to buy out the speakeasy that night, and we could have the run of the place. We had even a trolley set up to shuttle people from the hotel over to the space. So as we're setting up in the expo hall and putting all things together, and we start talking, we thought, well, can we still try to pull this off? Even up to the last minute, we were still going to try to do it. We were going to push this thing to the edge. And eventually we hit the point where the speakeasy called and said, no, we just can't even get our employees there. So we're not going to be able to do this. So we were really disappointed, but realized, all right, we adapt, we overcome. And the cool part is we're going to try it again this year, and knock on wood, no hurricanes. We're going to pull it off this time.
I love it. Okay, so guys, watch this space, because we're going to be sharing inside of this community how to register and how to attend. I'm planning to attend, and my understanding is, like, space is limited. This is not a massive speakeasy, so you will need to register and attend. Don't just show up at the door, because you may not be able to get in.
Yep, it's a cool spot. It used to be a shoe repair shop, like back in the 20s. Cool spot, but not real spacious. So we're going to definitely limit the number of folks we can bring along, but those select few are going to have a lot of fun.
I'm so excited. I love both of your teams. You are so out of the box thinkers. So it's interesting. My word for 2023 is resilience. And it kind of comes from the concept of traction and EOS and Rockefeller habits. Like, they talk about this concept of the quarterly business reviews inside of your own company, where the closer together you can have those reviews, instead of looking at your business every quarter. What if you looked at it once a month? What if you looked at it once a week? And all of a sudden you're making mid-course corrections very quickly, and you're normalizing a trajectory forward and upward, up and to the right, what we all want. And so as I started looking at my own business, at my own personality, my personality is very, like, when I'm up, but when I'm down, I'm down. And sometimes I stay down more days than I wish I did. And so the ability to bounce back, that resiliency, that kind of the Gumby, like, let's just normalize. The highs are what they are, the lows are what they are, but maybe we can just be a little more even keeled. And so that's been my word for the year. And I can't help but feel like that applies a little bit to your situation, because I cannot imagine the hours that went into planning this and then just the disappointment that you couldn't pull it off.
One, I'm impressed you dropped a Gumby reference, but you probably just dated both yourself and me that we know who Gumby is. So
I see this
yeah.
seems to be the month for dating myself on these live streams. I talked about AAA triptychs on a session last week or the week before, and one of the individuals on the live stream had no idea what I was talking about. So the two senior members, myself and one other, had to explain what a triptych is. And I think conceptually he understood, but could not fathom of a world without GPS. Like,
Sure.
so yes. So I love the resilience. I love the ability to bounce back, and we're going to do it this year. And I can't wait to see what happens there.
Yeah, that ability to turn on a dime. I mean, if you can position yourself as an organization to be able to adapt and pivot like that, it's a bit of a Wild West feel to it at times, but there are definite advantages if you know how to do it right and you're willing to just kind of roll with the punches and make the best of the situation. So
yeah, I mean, because in business there's things you can control for sure, but there's a whole lot of outside things that you can't control, and why let that stress you? So I've been doing a bit of studying of stoicism, which is almost this concept of recognizing that outside force and then letting it go, because you can't do anything about it. It's not in your control. So
yep. Control
okay,
what you can control. You're exactly
yes,
right.
control the controllables. I love it. Yes. Okay, so the other thing you and I have bantered around over the last year or so is the concept of selling cybersecurity and the desire for MSPs not to use FUD, not to use fear, uncertainty, and doubt when it comes to selling cybersecurity. And you and I have had this conversation on the air, off the air, and you've got a couple of new ideas that you've been working through with your MSP partners. And I want to park there for a little bit, because these are some really, really cool angles to use to sell cybersecurity.
Yeah, let me preface all this by saying I think there's definitely a place for making sure that your customers and your prospective customers are aware of how bad the situation is. I think there is a place in time for that, no doubt about it. We do it. We've built content around it. We've driven advertising campaigns around it. But I think there's also an opportunity to have a more nuanced conversation. And I think what really drove me to a lot of this is there's some market research floating around on LinkedIn, and forgive me for not knowing who to cite on this, but the claim is that there are over 4,000 cybersecurity products on the market today. If that's true, if that's even close to being true, I think it's a fair assumption that most of those are all going to market nearly the same way. The same talking points, the same buzzwords, the same color palette, you name it. There's not a lot of differentiation. And most of them saying we are the solution to every ransomware related, malware related problem you have.
Of course.
So if that's the case, is there a way to have a more nuanced conversation about cybersecurity that doesn't sound like all 4,000 of your competitors? And we're not just talking about vendor competitors, we're talking about MSP competitors that are out there having similar conversations based on fear, uncertainty, and doubt. So that's what caused me to do some thinking. I spent a heck of a lot of time kind of curating all the news stories out there. I share a lot of stuff on LinkedIn, but I also take a lot of time to look at how cybersecurity is being marketed and how it's being talked about. And that's where I thought, okay, great. Let's look at maybe a more strategic type of conversation that our partners can have and how we can help enable that conversation. So that's what got me to thinking about these 4 pillars I know we're going to talk about.
I love it. Okay, so I agree with you. I think there is a place for fear, uncertainty, and doubt in the sales process, because you've got to explain to your end user, help them discover that where they are now is probably underserving them and leaving them wildly unprotected. So there is a difference between fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and fear mongering, like creating this completely illogical fear about something that's not very likely to happen to them. It's not cybersecurity. It's very likely that something will happen to them if they have not changed anything in their network or the way that they approach their policies. If they haven't done anything in 10 years, you are not causing undue fear by saying something bad could happen to you. So I agree, there's a place for fear, uncertainty, and doubt. But at the same time, how do we approach this from a more strategic, almost a thought leadership approach?
Yep. And that's exactly what these four things are really based out of is, walking in the door, having some conversations and showing that you care about this potential customer or current customer as a person, as a business owner who's responsible for employees, and that you're there to help further their cause, not necessarily to cause more panic or undue panic, but what can you offer that helps them sleep better every single night?
And then what are you offering that your competitors are not, or how are you
Exactly.
positioning? Yeah. Okay, good. I like it.
Exactly. And I don't even think it's necessarily, that you would necessarily be able to deliver a different service than your competitor. It's how you're positioning your service offerings, I think.
Love
So the four things we really build around in how we have these conversations is, one, the fact that the majority of private or public organizations in the country, if not the world, I think it's fair to assume in the next year to two will be under some sort of cybersecurity regulation or cybersecurity standard or compliance that they will have to adhere to in some shape or form. And most of these organizations, if they are aware of it, have no idea where to turn or who to guide them through making sure they're ready for that. But more importantly, that you as a service provider potentially can help, can make sure that they're aligned to the best degree possible, the most economical way possible, so that they're ready for that regulation or compliance or whatever it might be.
I like it. So I'll help you get ready. Yeah. I'll help make sure that you're meeting those standards in the most economical way. We'll stay ahead of the curve. Okay, good.
So that's one. The second thing a lot of these conversations are coming to is cybersecurity insurance. So again, as we're talking about resilience, insurance is obviously a key part of that. And there's a lot of controversy around cybersecurity insurance and the role it plays in ransom payments. I get all that, but I don't think anybody can debate the fact that most organizations will need some sort of insurance. Great. If we've arrived at that understanding, what can I do as a managed service provider to make sure you're getting the best possible premium so that you're saving the most money possible? How am I able to make sure that we're taking a look at whatever the underwriting standards are for your particular policy, and we're making sure that we show exactly how you map to those requirements? Great. I'm going to save you money on your cybersecurity insurance premium. I'm going to make sure you're in compliance. I'm going to make sure you've got a more economical cybersecurity insurance premium. Right out of the gates, two things that you can do that are much more strategic in approach than just simply saying your hair is on fire and I'm the only one who knows how to put it out.
Well, it's so interesting. Before we get to the last two pillars, one of the things that MSPs are starting to hear a little bit more today than they did a year or two ago is around you're saying resilience. And so what that's saying to me, the small business owner, is that I'm probably going to have an incident anyway. So why should I invest in cybersecurity if the bad thing is still going to happen to me? And I understand that, right? Because as business owners, we want to invest and we want to see what we're getting for that investment. We can't see cybersecurity protection and we see, okay, I bought this. I thought it was going to stop all the bad guys, regardless of how it was positioned in the sales conversation. I, the buyer, thought I would never have a bad day because that's what we like to buy. Now you're telling me, honestly, no, the bad day may come anyway, but we've got an incident response plan or we've got pieces in place to help you bounce back faster. So this undercuts that objection because you're saying, you're going to have regulations, compliance, laws that say you have to do these things anyway. And then secondly, we're going to help you save money on your insurance. So all of a sudden we've undercut that objection. Maybe we haven't completely diffused it, but we've gone a whole long way towards diffusing it.
Yep. And I think The beauty of this isn't an either or proposition. It's not just being able to react to when the incident happens and respond. It's also being able to show that there are still some preventative things we can do and put in place to try to, you can't eliminate the risk completely. And if you're having honest conversations with your customers, they're not led to believe that, but you can significantly put a dent in what the risk exposure is.
Yes.
And I think these conversations, it's not a one or the other. I think you can have all of these conversations at once and show a more thoughtful approach, a more comprehensive approach.
Good. So we've got a couple of people on the live saying they are not a fan of selling based on fear. So that's exactly what we're talking about. This is a much more strategic way. So if you're just joining us, we're talking with Corey Munson with PC Matic, and these are some strategic ways you can talk about security protections and having your clients and prospects adopt security. So we talked about regulations. Regulations are coming, standards are coming. The MSP, can help make sure that you're ready, to make sure that we can check those boxes in the most economical way possible. And then number two, insurance, getting cyber liability insurance. And when you have these standards in place, when we've checked these boxes, we've followed frameworks, now we can help save money on insurance as well. So what are the other two pillars?
Let's tackle one that's in the works, but I think, again, it's safe to assume in the next year to 2 years, we'll see it, and that's tax credits. I think organizations of all sizes, and I've seen speculation that this is going to start even in the SMB space and kind of work its way through. But the idea that if you make significant or at least some cybersecurity investment, the idea that you would potentially be eligible for tax credits. And what I'm seeing is a lot of this stuff aligns to showing that you're in some sort of compliance with NIST, CIS, some sort of framework seems to be the guiding principle behind a lot of this. It's the common thread with the cybersecurity insurance and the tax credits, and this fourth pillar we'll come to.
But and it makes sense, right? Because you've got the government already talking about regulations, and so we humans don't like changes. We humans don't like change foisted on us from the outside. Like we let in talking about how as business owners, we have to be resilient and we have to realize we're not always in control. And so all of that really does relate to this point, that the government is saying you should be compliant. We're going to put regulations in place to make you be compliant. So the largest ways to motivate humans are the carrot and the stick. And so it makes sense that the government would try the carrot first. And so it's like, and we've seen this with other things, rolling out the tax, tax credits, tax benefits, sometimes even grants to help you adopt things to get yourself, more safe and more ready for these changes. So I love that. I also like that going in and talking about these things really does position that MSP as a thought leader, as a trusted authority, like all of those buzzwords that MSPs want to be that, but it's sometimes hard to step out of the fray and see what's coming. So I love that PC Matic is stepping up and saying, listen, borrow our thought leadership. It is coming. It makes a ton of sense. I mean, we can't point to a bill or point to something, but it's logical that it's coming. So I love that.
Yep, it's coming. And just a side note for knowing we're talking to MSPs here, there was at least one state, and I think it was Maryland, at least a couple of years ago, was experimenting with tax credits that tied to purchases made by residents of Maryland or companies in Maryland that were purchasing from cybersecurity service providers within the state.
Interesting.
Don't be shocked if you see states, and I know for a fact locally it's been experimented with, is that type of tax credit might find its way into other states too. And again, the more you're aware of this and can bring that to the table, man, you disarm that potential prospect that maybe is a little hesitant because they know there's a problem. And are you just chasing ambulances and that's why you're here, or are you actually here because you want to help me and better position me to address this as a larger issue and maybe even benefit from investment with you? So
and the marketing side of my brain is going crazy, because if you are in your community and you know that is something in your state or perhaps in your county, what a phenomenal opportunity to bring that to your community as a training opportunity, a webinar, a lunch and learn, an evening, like have you host your own speakeasy, and you're going to talk about the easy way to take advantage of this tax credit or this grant that your community may not know. And then if you follow me at all, I'm all about collaboration. So what if you're able to bring in a legal collaborator or a government person to say, yeah, what Corey's saying is true. Like, we've got all this grant money we're dying to give away, and we've got a session where we'll help you fill out the paperwork or whatever it might be. Now you are helping them fund their cyber resilience, but in order for them to get that grant money, they've got to be able to check the boxes, which means they need a provider to help them check the boxes. And you've created this little mini ecosystem. So thought leadership and bringing this information, about compliance regulations and tax credits. And so be on the lookout for that. It may not be there today, but I agree with Corey. I think it's coming.
Definitely coming. And then to
Awesome.
follow up on this, and this is another kind of legal twist, and this is the fourth pillar, is there's legislation out there, and I know it's been passed in Ohio and in my home state of Iowa just recently, like within the last 30 days, is a new law in the book called affirmative defense. And what this is, and I'm going to kind of butcher the legalese behind it, but what it's saying is, as an organization, if you can show that, and I believe the exact term is in the law, in good faith, you are adhering to one of the major cybersecurity frameworks, NIST, CIS, whatever you want to, whatever path there you want to take, you potentially insulate yourself from liability related to any future data breach. Now, I don't think this is saying it's a blanket statement that you can never be sued if you're ever breached in the future, but I think at least it lessens your risk potentially there, as my dogs beat at the door behind me. But
can't hear a thing. Your mic is
no,
doing a great
that's
job.
cool.
I can't hear them. I would never know.
But I think that, again, to be able to come in and present yourself as the solution provider that can help you get closer to something like this, or let me show you the path to get you that liability protection, or at least put you in a position where you are potentially protected against some sort of lawsuit down the road. That's a powerful way to come in and present yourself as a thought leader, as a solution provider, as someone who genuinely cares and wants to help that particular business owner or business leader. It just seems like such a pivot from, hey, ransomware is going to shut this place down in a matter of months, and it's only a matter of time unless you buy what I'm selling.
Yes. Okay. I love it. Okay. So I'm going to ask a question that was posed in the live with apologies if I'm putting anyone on the spot, but what do you think of express no liability statements inside of contractual agreements? Any opinions there? Like, I'm not liable. Like stuff might happen, and if it happens, I'm not liable because we've put in best in class and you're abiding by it, but it's going to happen anyway. Like, it's got a good chance of happening anyway. Any thoughts or any articles that you've read recently that you're willing to share with the crowd?
I can't say that I've seen anything recently, and it feels like maybe this is a little above my amateur law degree.
Right. I know we play an attorney on TV. We're not really attorneys.
I guess my first question would be, is that hold up in a court of law? I mean, if somebody really wanted to push you on this, or is this just one of these things that people throw in to try to throw people off the scent if they ever wanted to come chase you for something?
Yeah,
I definitely want to defer to somebody who understands the law a little bit better, and that'd be a really interesting session in itself.
I agree. And I also wonder if it potentially hurts your sale. Like, if I'm, let's completely change the frame. I'm hiring a marketing agency to create leads for me. Like, the holy grail that we all wish existed, right? Like, we'll hire this magical company and they'll create leads for me. But in their contract, they're like, but we're not really responsible for the results. Now, I understand it's an analogy and all analogies break down. And I understand that MSPs aren't promising, the results because we can't. However, that seems to me to possibly be the feel. So Steve is saying his wife's an attorney. And she said it should protect them. And he's got it in his agreement. And so far, it hasn't hurt them in the sales process. But I also know Steve's a great salesperson. So we've got to factor that in. But I do think it would be an interesting conversation, like to pull in a couple of the movers and shakers in the law community and just say,
Yeah.
What does this look like in real life?
I think it goes without saying it's probably not an ideal piece of these 4 pillars, and it's not part of that conversation. That goes without saying. But hey, if it's something you can execute on and give yourself a little bit of protection, great.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, so I want to take these 4 pillars, and if you're just joining us, we're approaching cybersecurity sales not from the FUD angle, not even from the angle of you are underprotected today, and some scary things might happen to you, and we can shift you and have you adopt our solution, but to approach it more from a strategic standpoint. So we talked about regulations are coming, insurance requirements are already here, potentially some tax credits are coming as well, the whole carrot and the stick. So if regulations are coming, which I think we are all seeing it coming, then it makes sense that tax credits or grants or something will be coming to help facilitate and get some adoption of those standards. And then we've got the affirmative defense law that has been passed in at least 2 states, saying you have some limit, you, the small business owner, has some level of limited liability. Your liability is limited if you can show that you aligned in good faith, whatever, it's a little vague today, but it will limit your liability. So with that in mind, that's kind of the talk track that you are encouraging your partners to position cybersecurity under. I want to bring this question to you because we had a pretty lively conversation inside of this community this week where an MSP had a client come to them and say, I've been happy, I've been using you for a few years, but I need to save $400 a month. How can we do this? And obviously I would never say, well, let's just sacrifice profit. That's not a tenable solution. But shaving off, outside pieces of our security solution also is not tenable. Ideally, losing the client isn't tenable, but I can't help but wonder if there's an opportunity to use these 4 pillars in that conversation. So I know this is not something that you've created. It's not an existing talk track, but I just wanted to discuss this with you live and just banter back and forth. How would you approach that? Hey, can you save me $400 a month with these 4 pillars in mind?
Yeah, as we talked before we went on the air, I mean, what a great opportunity to pivot back to these pillars and say, hey, my pricing is what it is, but what if we take another look or help you take another look at what you're paying for cybersecurity insurance? Is that something we originally helped you with? Is it a chance we can go back and look at an opportunity to save you some money on your premium? Do you have the most economical cybersecurity insurance package possible? Maybe some savings there, or even the tax credit. I mean, it's kind of a hypothetical now, but every reason to believe it'll be very, very real in the near future. What about reiterating the fact that if we can do X, Y, Z, and we've already done X and Y for you as part of my services, I think we can get you to this tax credit that you'll be eligible for by the end of the year. Instead of being able to say, yep, I'll take $400 off just to hold on to you, I'm going to show you where that $400 is going to come from.
I love it. And it may not be a dollar for dollar, like $4,800 per year may not equal a $4,800 tax credit. It may not equal a $4,800 savings on your cyber liability insurance. Like it probably will not be a dollars for dollars comparison. But I think there is tremendous value to be shown, that's what you're paying for. You're paying for me to strategize on your behalf. You're paying for my team for all of the research that we're doing and leaning on our experts like Corey to be able to find these tax savings and to find these ways to leverage potential savings for you. And so it isn't you're not paying me $2,500 a month to find you $2,500 a month in value. It's not like I'm ripping out your phone system because I can save you $17 a month. That really commoditizes what you're offering. But I think positioning it this way carefully, because you don't want to say, like, let me help you find $400. Look, we found 10, only $390 to go. Like, it's not that type of a value add, but to say, I need you to understand why your investment is what your investment is. So
Absolutely. And what a great opportunity to differentiate yourself. Again, let's go back to the fact that how many other MSPs are approaching the same people you're approaching, and most of the messages are all the same.
yes.
What a great opportunity to say, here's how I'm a little bit different. Were you aware of this tax credit? Were you aware of this liability protection? Yeah, I think it's a big opportunity. And let me throw in a plug for, I don't even know if you and I have discussed this podcast, Jennifer. There's a podcast called Audience First with Danny Wolf and Chris Roberts, and they have conversations about how cybersecurity is being marketed. And Chris has got a reputation as being a cybersecurity expert going way back. But they bring in CISOs, they bring in IT decision makers, they bring in business owners to talk about how they are being approached and how cybersecurity is being pitched and sold to them. And they kind of break down the absurdity of how all this messaging is the same, nothing's unique. I think, again, that's where maybe something a little bit more nuanced and strategic, like what we're talking about here, could really benefit and break out of that noise, because there is a ton of noise.
There is. And like you were saying, there's 4,000 cybersecurity providers for the MSPs. So the MSPs are hearing all of that noise, but so are the end users, the small and medium-sized businesses. It's just as much wah, 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 ransomware, wah, wah, machine learning, wah, wah, right? Like selling the widget. Somebody even said in the chat, there's people that are peddling FUD. Like it's really, it is almost this commoditized, like to some level, cybersecurity is even being commoditized because of the way that it's being sold.
Yep, absolutely.
So I want to go back, and this is probably a very difficult question to answer, and so you may not be able to answer it. Totally fine. I will give you that permission. But tax credits. Any idea, like, do you have guesses of what those dollars could be, or do you think it would be tied to the size of the organization? What do you think? I have no idea. So
I don't. I haven't really seen numbers tied to it. I've heard kind of high level, who would it potentially impact, who would be targeted first, what kind of, I think part of the debate will be not only what kind of dollars are we talking about, but what kind of expenditures would potentially be eligible for these tax credits. That's something similar to what you've seen with school districts have access to a lot of different grants and things like that, but they're very narrow in scope of what they can actually use that grant money for as it relates to networks or cybersecurity.
Right.
So I think that'll be the other thing to refine before these tax credits get off the ground, is if I go buy endpoint security protection for 500 of my endpoints, does that qualify, versus I want some, some sort of firewall hardware, whatever it may be.
Right. Or is it just the service? Only the SOC would be covered. I mean, who knows? The other danger I would foresee is if I'm buying from Corey and Corey says, there might be tax credits, I immediately am like, well, then do I want to invest today? Because if I've invested and upgraded 500 of my endpoints today, and the tax credits aren't available for a year, for example, will those credits apply to the expense that I make today? Or
is it retroactive? Right.
Yes.
Right.
So, I mean, as with everything, like there's pros and cons, but overarching, like if we go high level, the umbrella concept here is to approach this strategically. And so even if they're like, well, I don't want to spend because the tax credit isn't available today, by showing you are future casting, you're forward looking on their behalf. What else are you forward looking on? What else are you strategizing for them? You are positioning yourself as a difference maker.
You got it.
I love it. Okay, so I want to talk about PC Matic a little bit, because obviously if you're talking to your partners about this, how does PC Matic weave into this strategic conversation?
And that's how we've really tried to connect the dots from these 4 pillars to most of these pillars are going to somehow depend on your ability to show you comply or adhere to a cybersecurity framework. NIST, CIS, whatever. At the core, at the foundation of most of these frameworks is a call for some level of application control or application allow listing, which is our bread and butter. I mean, it's why we have, I think at last count, 9 US patents for what we do with application allow listing. So we pride ourselves on the fact that we can do it in the most economical, the most efficient, and the most effective way possible. And for us to be able to work with our partners and say, all right, even if you're going to take baby steps towards these frameworks and get your organizations and your customers in line, what are those baby steps? And why not start with something as foundational as application control? Even NIST in 2018 said the ability to identify what's running inside of your network and control those things is absolutely foundational. And the rest of the framework is dependent on your ability to do that. So why not use that as a starting point?
And it's part of the CIS like top 18, right? Isn't it
Yep.
in that top
Yep.
list?
I think it's one of control 2.5, something like that. It's right there. It's spelled out. Take a look at, the most recent CISA FBI Australian Systems Directorate bulletin that just came out last week about one of the new ransomware strains and gangs. In its list of potential mitigation and prevention strategies, application allow listing is front and center. So it has a place. It's a legitimate strategy. In some cases, it's been called one of the single most important security technologies any organization could put in place. Great. How do you do that for your organizations and the companies that you support and your customers, and do that in the most efficient way possible? And oh, by the way, let's work backwards again. We're adhering to NIST, we're adhering to CIS, which means maybe you're more likely to qualify for that better cybersecurity insurance, the tax credits, the liability protection. It all kind of builds on itself.
I love it. And if someone wants a demo or wants to have a deeper conversation, what's the best way to do that?
I'd say one of 3 ways. If you go to pcmatic.com/MSP, you can sign up for a demo right there. You can always email me at Corey, Corey @pcmatic.com, or as Jennifer knows, I'm a huge proponent of LinkedIn. I'm on there all the time. Come find me on LinkedIn. I think it's Corey-Munson, Munson, or just search Corey and PC Matic and chances are it'll come up.
I love it. And are you going to be at my event? I know PC Matic is sponsoring it, but are you personally going to be there?
I didn't want to break it to you live on the air that I personally won't be there, but a representative of PC Matic will be there. And
I saw the registration come through and I'm like, that doesn't say Corey.
Yeah, but
okay.
I'm super excited for your audience, not only to be exposed to all the other great content, but Bryn Tellman, one of my personal LinkedIn heroes, and I think your hero now.
Yes.
The fact that she's going to be there is worth the price of admission alone. The idea that she will give the MSPs in attendance actionable items that they could probably even sit there at the table, pull out their phones and implement, that'll change the way LinkedIn works for them and means more leads and opportunities.
Yeah, she's amazing when it comes to LinkedIn. We have a printed workbook. If you've never been to the event, you get a printed workbook. It is there's a lot of workshop components. So there is the opportunity to work on your business at your table and brainstorm with the people that are at your table. But she donated, I believe it was 25 or 30 pages of her IP to include in our workbook.
Awesome.
And she won't be able to go through all 30 pages from the stage, which means you'll have plenty to go back to your office and execute on. And she's fantastic when it comes to LinkedIn. And I'm doing a whole session on how to position yourself as a unique differentiator. And these 4 pillars I'm going to, of course, give a shout out to you and the PC Matic team, but I'm going to put these into that presentation because I think it's that important that MSPs hear how to position themselves as thought leaders and difference makers, and to cut through some of the FUD and some of the noise and the commoditization that's happening even inside of cybersecurity. So
let me say this about the event, and I'm not getting paid. I'm not a paid spokesman for the event. Having attended last year, having personally recruited a few of our MSP partners that are in the area to attend, and I took them out to dinner and we really dissected how the whole thing went. They said far and away, this is the event that gave them more actionable intelligence and more actionable takeaways than anything that they had recently attended. I mean, everybody on this call everybody out there that watches even the replay have probably been to some sort of conference where it's a lot of pie in the sky, motivational speaking, that type of thing. Great, there's a place for that.
Sure.
But the ability to spend a couple of hours, days, just absorbing actionable steps that you can turn around and implement right away, worth the price of admission. It's good stuff.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And I'll drop the link in the comments for anybody that doesn't have a ticket yet. I'll drop that in the comments. But yeah, it's coming up very, very quickly. And thank you so much for the kind words. Not paid to do that, but
Nope.
I very much appreciate it.
Unsolicited. Happy to do it.
Yes, I love it. Awesome. Well, I'm going to wrap us up, guys. Listen, reach out to Corey if you want to take a look at their solution. It's winning awards. It's got, they're partnering with ConnectWise. They've done some cool things with the US government. Like this is, I don't know. I don't want to create new taglines for them about like, this is not your mama's antivirus or whatever. But go take a look at what they're doing and put it through its paces, do a demo, have a conversation with Corey and the team. They're doing really, really good things in this space. So Corey, love having you on, love having you as a friend. We will have to do this again super soon.
You got it. Thanks, Jennifer.
Take care.